that's really honest. I mean, here's the thing. Like, there's a big difference between non-consensual non-monogamy, which most people call cheating or infidelity.
Yep.
And then consensual non-monogamy. And the biggest difference is that there's an open agreement, there's honesty, there's a contract around it. And just like if someone violates a monogamous agreement and they violate a non-monogamous agreement, that's problematic, right? And people have the right in any relationship to say, you know what, I feel jealous. I feel like your time's being taken up by other people, period. And I don't want to share you.
Yeah, because you're trying to find the people that are on the right, the same place as the scale that you are.
That's right. Yeah, ideally.
And just really, trying not to make somebody change.
Right.
Because honestly, I don't think people, for something like that, you have a jealous quotient. I mean, I think
if it's like an orientation.
Therapy, if you can go through therapy, I think you can learn to become less cruel about your jealousy.
Yeah, you can become more understanding.
But I don't think that it's going to stop the jealousy. I'm just getting,
Yeah.
that's the way you're wired a little bit? Okay.
I totally agree with you. And I think what you were talking about, how you all have friends, like there's different ways of being non-monogamy. There's social non-monogamy, emotional non-monogamy, physical non-monogamy, and everybody sort of has a scale for each one of those, right? So I might be totally okay, with my partner being socially non-monogamous. Like, go hang out with as many people as you want, do whatever you want, talk about anything. I don't really care. That's fine. But I might be really high in like emotional monogamy. I might be like, I don't want you to feel intimate and close to other people, right? So you can be social and have a good time, but I don't want you to like be like, I'm in love with this person, right? But maybe I'm okay with like somewhere in the middle sexually, I mean, maybe that's okay if you're a little bit sexual with people as long as you're not intimate. So I mean, it really, it's complex. And I think what we've done is taken our relationships and made them seem very simple. Mm-hmm. And now, because of the role of technology, because of the role of media, because of like the diversity that's growing and changing in our country, I think it's just not as simple as maybe it once was, or maybe it always was this complicated. We just didn't talk about it.
No,
right?
Yeah. I realized I was monogamy about like my living environment. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to have roommates because I wanted things exactly the way that I wanted them.
Yep.
And I wasn't going to.
Yep.
I have a certain cleanliness level. Yep. And that's how it's going to be.
You're space monogamous.
I'm a space monogamous.
That's hilarious.
My space.
You need to develop quizzes.
Oh, wouldn't that be great?
You need to
totally will.
You've got to figure that out and put it in like one of your upcoming books. Wouldn't that be fun? Because you could like talk about getting self-aware. I mean, you could learn a lot about yourself.
Damn well, I'm space. And I'm a relationship monogamous. I mean, but we go out and we have things that we do that are different socially with no problem, whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I mean, I have absolutely no intention of going on a week-long bike ride. Have fun.
Right. Yeah. No, I don't want to do that.
And he's like sitting on a beach for a week doing nothing. That's like death.
Yeah, as long as they both have wine, I would do either one of those things. That's my perspective.
Now you and I definitely just found a common ground right there.
That's right.
As long as there's wine. Oh my God.
Beers were fine.
Yeah, I'm definitely a wine non-monogamist.
That's hysterical. Next time I'll bring you some. My boyfriend owns a liquor store.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing connections.
Yes, I love that. Yeah. Well, okay, now that you bring this up, okay, so I'll share kind of something that happened to me. I was not a person, I have, if you're a woman and you grow up, you have female friends or whatever. And I had some friends that were constantly afraid of being cheated on. Yeah. And it was funny because I never had that chip. I was like, it just wasn't on my radar. I never believed that I was going to be cheated on. I just didn't see that coming. So then I get married and I got cheated on. But it was really interesting the way that it happened. And even though we needed to be divorced and, all of that, the betrayal is like, wow, and it's amazing that once that happens, then you kind of, it's almost like, be careful what you think about because you're going to draw, that sort of in. So I guess the question that I would have, especially with people that are trying to figure out where they are on these different scales, it's like, what do you as a therapist say to people to try to help them heal from betrayal?
Yeah.
That's a weird one. It's
really weird and it's really hard and really challenging. I think the thing to understand is the betrayal. Again, it's sort of like jealousy in the sense that these things happen in life. humans are capable of all sorts of really horrible things and loving things. I would really try to unpack the betrayal itself. So what was the part that felt like a betrayal? Is it the part about you had an agreement and that was not honored? Is it the part where, it was the actual, like, whatever kind of betrayal it is, the emotional part wasn't honored, the sexual part wasn't honored, whatever part it was, I would want to like really get into that with the person. And then actually sometimes even thinking about things when people are ready. First of all, they need a long time to be angry and be grieving that, because that's the reality of what it feels like to be betrayed. So they would need time for that. But eventually at some point I would work towards reframing it. Like, what do you think? Usually when people practice some sort of infidelity or non-consensual non-monogamy, it's not only about protecting them, right? But it's also about protecting that partner. So what was that person thinking or doing? Why did they feel the need to be protective that way? What does it feel like that someone chose to be protective in that way? Are there other ways they were protective that were helpful and this was not, So really trying to get someone to recognize, like, most likely this wasn't just about being an evil person and being deceptive. Usually it's about protecting someone else and oneself in the infidelity. And the only reason I would do that is so that the person doesn't feel like this was something, just about me, or this was something awful. Exactly.
Yeah. There are two people there.
There is definitely a dynamic. And honestly, the person who violates that dynamic obviously is the person who's in the wrong. Right? But I would also encourage the person to think about, when are times that you've been protective, or are there any parts of the relationship where you, were not, I'm not going to say the word betrayal, but you were not 100% honest or transparent or upfront or whatever terminology the person speaks. And the only reason I would do that is because it's an important growing opportunity for the person, even if they're not going to stay in that relationship, which sometimes people stay in relationships. They do. They work through the non-consensual non-monogamy. They figure stuff out. They work through the betrayal. They work through the jealousy. They work through all of it, and the relationship is even stronger. But a lot of times they don't, right? But that doesn't mean you want to become that girl or that guy or the whoever the person is going into the next relationship who's absolutely terrified of relationships now, right?
Convinced that this is simply going to happen again. That
exactly, or about me, or just about relationships. Yeah,
that one person represents every other person you'll ever see.
That's right.
But if you feel like you miss something, I guess you would question yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
So going through there.
Exactly. So it's really going through it and breaking it down with the person and trying to make it more contextualized about the situation, or about, this is with this one person. Certainly not every relationship is like that, but this is really hard because a lot of people, the research shows about 40 to 60% of people are infidelitous in their long-term relationships and marriages. We're not talking about a small percentage. And the reason it's such a big gap is because we're not even really sure. That's just who's reporting it, right? And that's just who's reporting it to therapists. So we don't really know how many people, and how do we define non-monogamy now? That's the other thing. Like, is it being friends with an ex on Facebook? I don't know. Certainly there's a whole category of Facebook infidelity that's being studied, so maybe it is. And Facebook's being cited in like 70% of divorces now. So I don't know, right?
Well, what do you do when you're on the outside? You're the friend of the people that are going through this. A lot of times they want you to pick sides. They may not say it.
Yeah.
But they want it. And I'm like, my God. There's been some folks I know that there's been actual, true evil things happening from one person. And that's pretty clear cut.
Of course.
And other times there's things where I'm like, from the outside, I see that this is about a 50-50.
Yeah.
You guys screwed this up.
Yeah, exactly.
and I'm like, okay. And I've always been considered a very logical person. People, said, well, that sounds about right. But sometimes I'm just like, okay, and unless they directly ask me, I'm not going to say anything. Because I just feel like, oh my God, if they can't, because I feel like you could really step your foot into your relationship with that, person,
Right.
or step on any
Right.
of the boundaries there.
Right. Well, again, that's a matter of being protective, right? So, and one of the things, especially in the Midwest, that people are good at is protecting people. That's sort of where part of the passive, I hate this terminology, but the passive aggressive nature comes from, right? Like, I don't want to actually be aggressive towards someone, so I'll do it this subtle way so that I can preserve our relationship, right? So being protective, not only is it natural, but it's really culturally expected here. So when I have like somebody come into therapy who's like, my best friends are going through a breakup because of, infidelity, which is oftentimes part of it. And they're like, I don't know how to be friends with both of them right now. What I usually say is, early in the beginning, when people are first going through this, it is going to be hard to manage a friendship with both people. You might sit down and say to each of them, I want to maintain a friendship and I want that to be a part of our life. I want you a part of my life. So for now, it might make more sense for you to go talk to like a professional about this rather than talk to me about it. I can be supportive in other ways. And if you do want to talk to me, understand that that's going to be hard because I have a friendship with both sides. And I feel a strong need to be protective of each of you for whatever reason, unless it's clear cut. There are those very clear cut, like the person probably like it's not a dynamic. One person had like maybe they had a personality disorder or something along those lines that's like unchangeable. Right. And then that's different. You probably don't even want to be friends with them anyway. Right. Or maybe it was like a sexual assault. Right. And that ended the marriage because many times people don't realize this, but sexual violence and sexual assault is actually relatively common in long-term marriages and partnerships. Right. So in that case, you probably aren't going to be like, yeah, let me stay friends with the perpetrator. Right. But you're right. A lot of times it's very much a dynamic, and just being respectful of like, until you guys kind of get further along in this is the role I think I need to play in order to protect me and both of you. And there are professionals out there. So you need to go talk to someone, but it can't be me. It can't be me. I want it to be me, but it can't be me. And that's coming from a space of loving you and caring about you. So, and I think if we're transparent about those fears, like I'm afraid that if I try to be your friend and his friend or her friend, then it's going to get all messed up, and I'm really trying not to have that happen, right?
Yeah. In other words, unpleasant for a while, but hopefully everyone can work through it.
It usually gets better years later. Yeah, usually years later, a lot of people are able to have a broader friendship, with both parties. But that early, think about it, it's crisis mode. It's really hard for people to be logical and not emotional during that time. So the people usually going through a big breakup, especially as a result of like non-consensual non-monogamy, they're not really thinking rationally at that moment. They're just hurt and they're betrayed and they're angry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. Cause, and I just in hearing you speak, it's what upset me was because we had basically decided to split. We were still living together. And then I found out he was screwing his assistant that I helped him hire. And what was so disturbing about it to me, it wasn't the sex part. Yep. It was, this is an immigrant person, a very cunning person. And I could literally, my life flashed before my eyes about how she wanted like my life. And that was so creepy. You know what I mean? And
it's like single white female-y.
It was. And I was like, oh my God, because she was always like, ogling just my stuff, and I realized that I was so terrified that, because she was an employee, that she was going to like really like destroy what we had built, even though we were about to chop it in half, but still, you know what I mean? I was so, and that took me a really
reasonable.
long time. Yeah. And so, I actually forgave him, about that, that part, but it's like, it's still, it took me a long time to shake that whole, somebody really tried to come in and take my stuff.
Yeah.
Like, that was a freaky thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he and I are like pretty good friends now. He's remarried and all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was very straight. It wasn't, I didn't have the typical experience that I've hugged and patted my friends over.
Yeah.
Over the years, but yeah.
Yeah. No, this was about someone trying to literally come in and take your life.
It was. It
Yeah.
was so weird.
Yeah.
And so, whatever. And it was funny because they didn't even make it like 3 months.